Three tails, old yin. Three tails, old yang. Two tails, one head, yang yang. Two tails, one head, yang yang. Two tails, one head, young yang. Three tails, old yin. Our bottom trigram, our primary hexagram, will be read as broken, solid, solid. This is the trigram. Xun, wind or wood. Xun is both wind and living plants. Whatever penetrates, spreads, and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance. And so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. Our top or outer trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as solid, solid, broken. This is the trigram. Dewy, lake or marsh. Dewy is lake and marsh, abundant energy that teems with life. She is the impulse to communicate, share, and exchange, and delights in both inner and outer conversation. She brings things into circulation and gives them voice. This is the sheer enjoyment of participating in life to the full, expressing ourselves and hearing others and satisfying our desires. Lake is the youngest daughter, spirit of the fertile west and of autumn. Dewy, lake or marsh above Xun, wind or wood gives us hexagram 28. Once our first and second lines transform from their old versions to their young opposites, old yin will transform to young yang, old yang will transform to young yin, giving us a bottom trigram of our supporting hexagram of solid, broken, solid. This is Con, water. No, sorry, Li, fire and light. Li is fire and light, both inner and outer. As an inner light, she is consciousness at its most lucid and unclouded, holding things together in the mind, perceiving their differences and connections, and discerning the underlying patterns of relationship. And as well as vision, Li is the light that makes things visible, the power to cast light on things, spreading clarity and the awareness of order. Li is the middle daughter, living in the south, the region of midsummer and the burning sun. Our top or outer trigram of our supporting hexagram will be read as solid, solid, solid. This is Qian, heaven. Qian is suprahuman cosmic law, Enduring, he determines the nature and development of all things, from the movement of the stars to the cycle of the seasons, to causing each individual seed to grow into its own kind of plant. Heaven is creativity in its pure form, the force that drives change and what endures within it. He confronts us with truth and what it demands, both as the absolute law of nature and as the challenge of individual calling, experienced as an inner law. He is both the awareness of what to do and how to be, and also the power to act on it. Heaven is Father, found in the northwest, the realm between autumn and winter, when the buds set and seeds fall to earth. Quion heaven, above Li, fire and light, give us hexagram. 13. We will be getting the titles to our hexagrams from Liu Yiming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. It's quite alchemical in nature. Hexagram 28, Liu Yiming calls excess of the great, following desires, delighting in externals, inability to control strength. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 13 is sameness with people, mixing in with the ordinary world, concealing illumination, assimilating to others. Sameness with people. We will start by reading from Hilary Barrett's I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future, which is a nice introductory I Ching commentary, and yet still has some profound points about it. Hexagram 28, Hilary Barrett calls Great Exceeding. Key questions. What is overloaded? What have you outgrown? What must you do? Oracle. Great exceeding, the ridgepole warps, fruitful to have a direction to go, creating success. When we approach the I Ching to consult the oracle, the question we bring to it will always have the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. When you exceed something, you cross over a line and make a transition. The traditional Chinese house has a structure like an old-fashioned tent. Uprights support a horizontal ridgepole, and all the weight of roof and walls is suspended from there. Here, the ridgepole's limits have been exceeded. The supporting framework is no longer adequate to the weight it's asked to bear. This means stress and also a greatness of spirit and purpose that goes beyond the scope of the situation. It is fruitful to have a direction to go, to reach out imaginatively and explore. Since things cannot hold up as they are, there must be movement. Image. The lake submerges the tree, great exceeding. A noble one stands alone without fear, withdraws from the time without sadness. Water should sustain the tree, but an excess will drown it. Interaction and communication should sustain you, but too much will be overwhelming. drowning the natural growth of your spirit in a flood of demands and expectations. You cannot possibly absorb all these demands and preoccupations into your own identity. You would only lose yourself. So a noble one is not afraid to stand alone, nor is she depressed at leaving society behind. She is moved by an inner purpose and not a product of her environment. Sequence. Great exceeding follows from hexagram 27, nourishment. With no nurturance, it is not possible to act, and so great exceeding follows. Great exceeding is the opposite experience to nourishment. Imbalance instead of balance. Overloading the structure instead of living within it. But to be capable of the dynamic action great exceeding requires, you need to be well nourished. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 13, people in harmony. Key questions. What are the unique contributions? Where is the common ground? How will your life change if your group expands? Oracle. People in harmony in the wilds, creating success, fruitful to cross the great river. A noble one's constancy bears fruit. People create harmony with one another where they are of a like mind and find common cause. They come out from the walls of their villages to forge alliances in the wild country. That is, they seek out common ground where they can meet, beyond the familiar boundaries that usually define the limits of people like us. This means radically expanding the whole idea of who we are. Such fellowship is usually created between people, but it can also take place within an individual. For instance, between inner selves, or between apparently unrelated traditions and ways of knowing. There is harmony when these are brought together in inner conversation to create strong alliances. There is strength and energy in alliance. People in harmony can commit themselves further, take greater risks. They can cross the river and enter new territories. Once there is agreement, it's worthwhile to follow the vision tenaciously with the constancy of a noble one. Image. Heaven joins with fire, people in harmony. A noble one sorts the clans and differentiates between things, between beings. Imagine the fire reaching up towards the night sky, joining with the stars to cast light on the many clans gathered around it. A noble one has the clarity of vision to see the shared nature all the groups have in common, and also what is shared only within each individual group. And how this distinctiveness comes from their clannish roots. Harmony between people will not come about by forcibly amalgamating the clans. To disarm their natural defensiveness, the noble one needs first to recognize and respect identities different from his own. Sequence. People in harmony follows from hexagram 12, blocked. Things cannot end with blockage, and so people in harmony follows. The exclusive, divisive mindset of us versus them must be replaced by a larger sense of fellowship. Human awareness lights up the world, perceiving and creating the possibilities for co-creation and overcoming the drift apart of hexagram 12. Pair. People in the home forms a pair with hexagram 14, great possession. Great possession means crowds. People in harmony means connecting. There is power in groups and alliances, but the emphasis for now is on the human experience of harmony and connection, rather than on what might emerge. We'll now turn to our primary hexagram and read our changing lines 1, 2, and 6, which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. They each have their own general context. Changing line 1 has the general context, inklings, just beginning to sense what could be involved or needed. Changing line 2, the general context, the heart's perception, the emotional center, where you make and feel connections. And changing line 6, beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Hexagram 28, changing line 1. So in great exceeding, changing line 1. For the offering mat, use white thatch grass, no mistake. Here at the beginning of great exceeding, you need to take great care, like someone who cushions their offering with layers of grass. This gentle, generous support is the best way to show your commitment. With the roof threatening to fall, you might feel as though you ought to be doing something more decisive. Yet in fact, this is the first step. Even if the details you attend to are trivial in themselves, what you are caring for is sacred. Changing line 2. Withered willow sprouts a shoot. Venerable man gets a young wife. Nothing that does not bear fruit. Willow trees have an irrepressible vitality. The old wood will open to the flow of new sap, and even the withered willow sprouts shoots. And in the same way, even older men can marry and have the chance of new descendants. The framework gains a new lease of life, and nothing fails to bear fruit. Even if it seemed exhausted, it can hold space for something new, young and fertile. And changing line 6. Exceeding in wading the river, head underwater, pitfall, no mistake. Going too far as you wade the river, you will be in over your head. You're quite likely to drown. It's easy to overestimate your ability to handle the unknown, to imagine you can integrate it into your normal life. It can't be done. You can't enter this river without sacrificing at least some part of yourself. Yet even if this is a personal disaster, it is not and cannot be a mistake. It's just how it works when you surrender yourself to the river. So how far are you prepared to go? We will also look at Liu Yiming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept, and it's quite alchemical in nature. Hexagram 28, our primary hexagram, again, Liu Yiming calls excess of the great. When the great is excessive, the ridgepole bends. It is good to go somewhere. That is developmental. Explanation. Excess of the great means there is an excess of yang energy. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is lake, joyous, and below is wind, entering. Going along with what is inside, delighting in externals, following what one desires. When happiness culminates, it produces grief. In the body of the hexagram, inside are 4 yangs and outside are 2 yins. Yang exceeds yin, and yin does not come up to yang. Therefore, it is called excess of the great. This hexagram represents harmonious blending of the medicinal substances, in which fullness requires use of emptiness. It follows on the previous hexagram, nurturance of the great. In nurturance of the great, one is strong yet can stop and be still. Stilling strength, not letting yang energy get too excessive, is properly the means to nurture strength. In spiritual alchemy, the path of the gold elixir, we take 2 times 8 ounces of the polar energies and congeal them into an embryo. It requires that the great and small be undamaged, and both realms be complete. If yang energy is too strong and yin energy too weak, then yin and yang are not in harmony, and you lose the path of continual renewal. When yin culminates, there will be decay, and when yang culminates, there will be deterioration. Going on in this way, the trouble of the ridgepole bending and breaking is inevitable. When the ridgepole snaps, the whole house falls down. In the same way, practitioners of the Tao who promote yang too much, who do not know when enough is enough, who can be great but cannot be small, suffer damage to their spiritual house. If you can proceed breezily without becoming too intense, being harmonious and easygoing without clinging, mastering the ability to adapt to changes, preventing danger and being aware of perils, then firmness and flexibility will correspond. Yin and yang will balance each other. Though great, you can avoid excess, so that it is beneficial to go somewhere. Consummating essence and perfecting life, you develop without hindrance. In our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, Liu Yiming calls sameness with people. Sameness with people in the wilderness is developmental. It is beneficial to cross great rivers. It is beneficial for a superior person to be upright. Explanation. Sameness with people means other people and oneself are as one. As for the qualities of the hexagram, above is heaven, strong, and below is fire, luminous. Employing strength with illumination, making illumination effective by strength, being truthful within and adept without, developing oneself and others as well, it is therefore called sameness with people. This hexagram represents mixing in with the ordinary world, concealing one's illumination, skillfully assimilating to others. It follows on the previous hexagram, tranquility. In tranquility, yin and yang match each other. Strength and receptivity are united. When practitioners of Tao reach the point where yin and yang are balanced, strength and receptivity are unified, and the spiritual embryo is formed. Then they can merge with the ordinary world, hiding their illumination, to cultivate advanced practice. But to mix with the ordinary world, concealing one's own light, requires great impartiality and impersonality. This is a matter of being selfless. If there is no self, there are no others. When there is no self or others, the sense of others and self leaves. When the sense of others and self leaves, then others are oneself, and oneself is identified with others. This is like the skies covering everything, like the sun's shining everywhere. One can thus return others and self to emptiness. Being like others in the wilderness, as it were, this assimilation being unfailingly developmental. The wilderness is a vastness where there are no people. Being like people as though in a wilderness means there is no image of self, no image of others, no image of people. If one cannot be the same as other people with a true heart, and can only be the same as them in favorable circumstances but not in adversity, only in times of ease but not in danger, then this sameness is not true and sure, and is ultimately not developmental. When the text says, it is beneficial to cross great rivers, it means that if one can go along through situations of danger and difficulty, then where there is no danger or difficulty, wherever one goes, it will be beneficial. Every ordinary person in the world assimilates to others, but most people do so for personal reasons and do not do it correctly. They assimilate to those they should be the same as, but they also assimilate to those whom they shouldn't be like. This is not the meaning of sameness with people in the wilderness. Therefore, the benefit of crossing great rivers is beneficial insofar as one is upright, like a superior person. The superior person assimilates based on correctness, not on sentiment. What is correct is only a matter of what is right and true. Sentiment changes, while truth has no change. If one assimilates based on truth, when there is no sentiment, the ideas of others and self both are transformed. Only truth is to be preserved. Inwardly, one can thereby develop oneself, and outwardly develop others. Seeing afar by means of illumination, acting directly by means of strength and illumination both working, firmness and flexibility balancing each other, inwardly not losing oneself, outwardly not hurting others, round and bright, clean and bare, one stands in the midst of myriad things without being inhibited by myriad things. One is within yin and yang without being constrained by yin and yang. We'll turn next to our primary hexagram and read changing lines 1, 2, and 6, which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. They may not all 100% agree with one another, and if that's the case, we're to just take and gnaw on that ourselves, see what it might mean for us. Each changing line has its own general context. The general context of changing line 1 is inklings just beginning to sense what could be involved or needed. Changing line 2, the heart's perception, the emotional center, where you make and feel connections. And changing line 6, beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Changing line 1 of primary hexagram 28, excess of the great. Spreading white reeds, no fault. Explanation. When one is by nature weak and also dwells in an inferior position, weakness is excessive. The extreme of prudence is like spreading a mat of white reeds to place an offering, not presuming to go ahead of others. Presumptuousness vanishes, and there is naturally no fault of excessive greatness. This is being small, but nonetheless excessive. Changing line 2. A withered willow produces sprouts. An old man gets a girl for a wife. Altogether beneficial. Explanation. Firm yet able to be flexible, using yin to balance yang when it is excessive, not letting excess go too far. This is like a withered willow producing sprouts, an old man getting a girl for a wife. Yin and yang match, so the living potential is always present. Firm and strong, but not injurious. This is naturally altogether beneficial. This is using flexibility so firmness does not go too far. In changing line 6. Excess reaching the peak of destruction is unfortunate. There is no blame on other people. Explanation. At the end of excess of the great, being ignorant and acting arbitrarily, not knowing the medicinal substances or the firing process, doing whatever comes to mind, going astray and not returning, the damage is worse the higher one goes. Excess reaches the peak of destruction. One calls misfortune upon oneself. It is no fault of others. This is excess of the great in the sense of being weak and entertaining illusions. Looking over the 6 lines, excess of the great is inauspicious. Not going too far is auspicious. Within excess of the great, there is still a way of not going too far. It lies in people skillfully combining yin and yang so that they end up in proper balance. It is important not to be one-sided or partial. We'll also look at the commentary section for each of our hexagrams. Hexagram 28, Great Excess. Lake above, wind below. Moisture destroys wood in excess. Thus, superior people stand alone without fear and leave society without distress. Great excess is excess of the great. Above is lake, associated with moisture. Below is wind, associated with wood. The nature of water is to flow downward. The nature of wood is to float upward. When water rises above wood, it can destroy wood, and when wood descends below water, it can be destroyed by the moisture. This is the image of great excess. What superior people see in this is that just as a great excess of moisture can destroy wood, so can a great excess of talent and intelligence in people destroy their character. Therefore, they take the model of water rising above wood in the sense of standing alone without fear, and take the model of wood descending below water in the sense of concealing themselves and being free from distress. Thus they accomplish the will of a person of exceeding greatness, and perfect the character of a person of exceeding greatness. Because superior people who practice the Tao consider nature and life to be the most important matter, they look down upon all existence as empty of absoluteness, being like a clear lake, unsullied by the dust of objects. They make use of the phenomena of the world to practice the principles of the Tao, playing a unique tune on an individual harp. Unmoved by the prospects of life or death, they stand aloof of all things without fear. Like the flexibility of wood, they have talent, but do not presume upon it. They have intelligence, but do not rely on it. Though simple in appearance, they hold a treasure. Concealing their illumination and nurturing it in obscurity, they do not seek to be known to others. They are hidden in profound privacy and have no distress. Having no fear means that one cannot be constrained by things. Having will and energy far beyond that of others. Having no distress means that errant thoughts do not arise, and one has cultivated development far beyond that of others. Because of having no fear and no distress, one can accomplish that which is rare in the world, and be beyond the perception and beyond the reach of ordinary people. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 13, sameness with people. Heaven above, fire below. Heaven with fire, sameness with others. Thus do superior people distinguish things in terms of categories and groups. Sameness with others means being the same as other people. Above is heaven, below is fire. Fire is the sun. The sky covers everything. The sun shines on everything. The sky and the sun are in the same place, impartial and illuminating. This is the image of sameness with others. What superior people see in this is that when practitioners of the Tao deal with people, it is important to be able to be the same as others. Yet it is most important not to assimilate to them arbitrarily. So they distinguish them in terms of categories and groups. Categories and groups are internally similar and united, like different classes of people, each having their own groups. Superior people see each group as a category in which all members are the same. Distinguishing means differentiating. Things are things that are right or wrong, good or bad. Superior people must distinguish things. They dare not arbitrarily consider all categories and groups the same. This is how they model themselves on the impartiality of heaven and distinguish things in emulation of the illumination of the sun. When one is impartial and also lucidly aware, there is no one in the world one cannot be the same as, and there is nothing in the world that is arbitrarily considered the same as something different. This is because superior people assimilate by means of the Tao, not in terms of mentality. They assimilate by means of reason, not in terms of personality. This is what is called harmonizing without being influenced, associating without becoming a partisan. This is how the sky and the sun are the same toward things, and this is how superior people are the same with others. We will next look at James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes, which I've left links to in the description box below. He has synthesized several I Ching commentaries in one helpful place. And he is a practitioner of the Tao himself. He gives good notes and paraphrases at the end of each to kind of tie everything together, and often gives helpful quotes from things like the Kabbalah, Carl Jung, stuff like that. Hexagram 28, our primary hexagram, James Dekorne calls critical mass. Other titles might be preponderance of the great, the symbol of great passing, excess, the passing of greatness, great surpassing, great gains, experience, greater than great, greatness in excess, dominance by the mighty, the passing of greatness, excess of the great, and law of karma. Judgment, leg. Critical mass depicts a weak beam. Under such conditions, it is advantageous to move in any direction whatever. Success is indicated. Blowfold, excess. The ridgepole sags. It is favorable to have some goal or destination in view. Success. A glance at the hexagram will show that it is too heavy in the middle and too weak at the ends. A number of firm lines is generally auspicious, but there can be too much of a good thing. Ritsuma/Karcher, great exceeding, the ridgepole sagging, harvesting, possessing directed going, growing. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of your connection to a ruling principle. It emphasizes that pushing the guiding idea beyond ordinary limits and accepting the results is the adequate way to handle it. Cleary 1, when the great is excessive, the ridgepole bends. It is good to go somewhere that is developmental. When the ridgepole snaps, the whole house falls down. In the same way, practitioners of the Tao who promote yang too much, who do not know when enough is enough, who can be great but cannot be small, suffer damage to their spiritual house. The image, leg. The image of trees beneath a marsh forms critical mass. The superior man, in accordance with this, fearlessly stands alone and stays retired from the world without regret. Wilhelm/Baines. The lake rises above the trees, the image of preponderance of the great. Thus, the superior man, when he stands alone, is unconcerned, and if he has to renounce the world, he is undaunted. Blowfold. This hexagram symbolizes a forest submerged in a great body of water. The superior man, though standing alone, is free from fear. He feels no discontent in withdrawing from the world. This is suggested by the component trigrams. Water is necessary for the nourishment of the trees, but too much of it can cause serious damage. Ritsuma/Karcher. Marsh, submerging wood, great exceeding. A chansu, or chief son or superior person, uses solitary establishing not to fear. A chansu uses retiring from the age without melancholy. Cleary 2. Moisture destroys wood, developed people, etc. Only when sustained by the power to stand alone without fear and avoid society without distress can learning be firmly rooted and development have a proper basis. Then it is possible to refine and support the mediocre. Confucian commentary. Confucius/Leg. Excess is weakly supported at either end, with weakness in both the lowest and topmost lines. The dynamic lines are in excess, but two of them are in the central positions. The trigrams of flexibility and satisfaction indicate that there will be advantage in moving in any direction whatever. There will be success. Great indeed is the work to be done during this extraordinary time. Leg. Extraordinary times require extraordinary skills in their management. The figure shows two magnetic lines at top and bottom, with four dynamic lines between them, giving the image of a great beam unable to sustain its own weight. Lines 2 and 5 are both dynamic and central, however, and from this and the attributes of the component trigrams, a good auspice is obtained. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. A stressful situation is best managed with a comprehensive strategy. Or, in the chess game of life, one succeeds by planning several moves in advance. The superior man serves the work by going his own way, regardless of public opinion. Wilhelm titles this hexagram Preponderance of the Great. I prefer R.L. Wing's paraphrase of critical mass as more evocative of the figure's meaning in modern terminology. In critical mass, four dynamic lines lurk inside of the hexagram, weakly contained at the top and bottom by two magnetic lines. This energetic concentration could explode in an unpredictable release of force, and hence the judgment tells us to move now. Remember, non-action is also action. To avoid unwanted consequences. Often the outcome is predictable. Be prepared to just walk away if and when that is your best move. Leg's translation of the judgment is, it is advantageous to move in any direction whatever. This is a different message than Wilhelm's. It furthers one to have somewhere to go. Leg's version implies an almost hysterical flight from danger, while Wilhelm's rendition suggests a prior intention and planning. The latter interpretation is definitely what is meant here, as confirmed by Cleary's Buddhist commentary. When the transformative path is flourishing, contaminations easily arise. It is best to set up guidelines and regulations. When meditation work is advanced, ignorance is about to dissolve. It is best to exercise the mind skillfully. Coupled with Cleary's translation of the image as developed people stand alone without fear, avoid society without distress, the idea is that one should follow one's best intuition and ignore popular illusions, political correctness, or inner fears. Psychologically conventional thinking, socially conditioned reflexes, knee-jerk responses, etc. During a time of critical mass, pay close attention to direction from the self to preserve the work. This is not the time to follow the crowd. Sometimes this can mean that you are obliged to go it alone, one of the work's frequent tests. A quote from G. Knight in A Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism. The gulf is something that has to be leaped, and leaped alone, stripped of all hindering burdens in faith. It is thus one of the crisis points of spiritual progress because of the great temptation to turn back from the unknown to the apparent safety of known things. And to succumb to this temptation is to lose all the fruits of past endeavor. Suggestions for meditation. Compare the judgment and image of this hexagram with those of hexagram number 32, consistency. Anthony. We must regain modesty through the effort to rid ourselves of strong elements that cause us to press forward. The strong elements may exist in someone else, causing them to assault us with their fear, mistrust, or doubt. Strong refers to impetuous movement to resolve what is ambiguous. We can meet the challenge by remaining detached and letting things go through their changes. To be truly rich is to remain modest. To be truly powerful is to remain reticent. and our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. James Dekorne calls union of forces. Other titles might be fellowship with men, the symbol of companionship, lovers, beloved friends, like-minded persons, concording people, gathering men, sameness with people, universal brotherhood, fellowship, community, united, human association, union of men, integration of forces, minor synthesis, cliques, concordance, to be in accord with, confirmation, judgment, leg. Union of forces appears in the remote districts of the country, indicating progress and success. It will be advantageous to cross the great stream. It will be advantageous to maintain the firm correctness of the superior man. Blowfold, lovers or friends, in the open, success. It is advantageous to cross the great river or sea, to make any kind of journey. The superior man will benefit if he does not slacken his righteous persistence. Ritsuma/Karcher, concording people, tending towards the countryside, growing, harvesting, wading the great river, harvesting, Chunsu, trial. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of sharing a goal with others. It emphasizes that finding ways to cooperate with and harmonize people's efforts is the adequate way to handle it. Cleary 1. Sameness with people in the wilderness is developmental. It is beneficial to cross great rivers. It is beneficial for a superior person to be upright. The image, leg. The image of heaven and fire form union of forces. The superior man, in accordance with this, distinguishes things according to their kinds and classes. Blowfold. This hexagram symbolizes heaven, the sun, and fire representing a pair of lovers. The superior man treats everything in a manner proper to its kind. An analogy based on the component trigrams between the sun and fire, which to some extent are of a kind. Ritsuma/Karcher, heaven associating with fire, concording people, a Chunsu, or chief son or superior person, uses sorting the clans to mark off the beings. Commentary, Confucius/Leg, in union of forces, the magnetic line has the central place of influence and responds to her correlate line in the top or the upper trigram of strength. The hexagram takes its name from the upper trigram of strength, lending its power to the lower trigram of clarity and intelligence. This represents the correct course of the superior man. It is only the superior man who can comprehend and affect the minds of all under the sky. Leg. Union of forces describes a condition which is the opposite of the preceding hexagram of divorcement. What was there distress and obstruction is here a union of forces, but it must be based entirely on the good of the whole, without any taint of selfishness. The dynamic line correctly in the fifth place occupies the most important position and has for his correlate the magnetic second line also in her correct place. The one female line is naturally sought after by all the male lines. The editors of the Konghasi edition would make the second line respond to all of the lines of the upper trigram as being more agreeable to the idea of union. The upper trigram is that of heaven, the lower is of fire, whose tendency is to mount upwards. This image suggests the fire ascending, blazing to the sky, and uniting with it. All these ideas are in harmony with the notion of union, but it must be free of all factionalism, and this is indicated by its being in the remote districts of the country, where people are unsophisticated and free from the corrupting effects of urban intrigue. Although a union from such motives can cope with the greatest difficulties, yet a word of caution is added. Notes and paraphrases, judgment. Connections are being made. If you are able to maintain your will, it is advisable to push for a synthesis. The superior man differentiates and prioritizes. He sorts and evaluates his options. This is another image of union, not the supreme union of hexagram number 11, harmony, but a subordinate union of forces within the psyche which builds towards an eventual grand alliance. The component trigrams show the union of strength and clarity, suggesting that a certain level of mental comprehension is involved. To receive the hexagram without changing lines is often a confirmation of your particular thought, saying in effect, you've made the connection. Comprehension, synthesis, involves making distinctions, analysis, a paradoxical process in which one must divide before one can reunite. This is the solve et coagula of alchemy. Thus we see the superior man in the image creating categories to bring about union. This is discrimination directed toward reclassification or rectification. For example, a heterogeneous mixture of vegetable and flower seeds is made meaningful when one sorts them into their separate categories. The disparate elements then become coherently united. In I Ching terms, each line obtains its proper correlate, as in hexagram number 63. A quote from Plotinus in the Enneads: dialectic alternates between synthesis and analysis until it has gone through the entire domain of the intelligible and has arrived at the principle. Stopping there, for it is only there that it can stop, no longer busying itself with a multitude of objects, since it has arrived at unity, it contemplates. The Chinese name of this hexagram includes the word Zhen, which is apparently a difficult concept, since many philosophers have spent a good deal of energy in trying to define it. A quote from Wing-Tsit Chang in A Source Book in Chinese Philosophy: Zhen has been variously translated as benevolence, perfect virtue, goodness, human-heartedness, love, altruism, etc. None of these expresses all the meanings of the term. It means a particular virtue, benevolence, and also the general virtue, the basis of all goodness. Neo-Confucianists interpreted it as impartiality, the character of production and reproduction, consciousness, seeds that generate, the will to grow, one who forms one body with heaven and earth, or the character of love and the principle of mind. In modern times, it has even been equated with ether and electricity. Chu Hsi defines Zhen as the character of the mind, psyche, and the principle of love, union. Interpreted in this way, we are enabled to apprehend the essence of the word love, which is union, becoming one with its object. I have chosen the title of Union of Forces to emphasize intrapsychic dynamics which are not immediately obvious in Wilhelm's title of Fellowship with Men. For example, in dealing with questions pertaining to the work, the concept of ego states or subpersonalities is often relevant to the symbolism of this hexagram. A quote from J.G. Watkins in The Therapeutic Self: the human self has been described here as composed of different ego states separated by boundaries. It has been likened to the structure of political principalities. From clinical observation, we find that ego states can cooperate for mutual well-being, like allied nations against a common enemy. An ego state may become split, like East and West Germany, or fracture into mini segments, like the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Ego states may become cognitively dissonant and hostile to each other, like Syria and Israel. In fact, the behavior of ego states within an individual is not unlike that between individuals and between those groups of individuals called countries. Why should the behavior of human stuff not be substantially similar at all levels of its organizations? The evidence of self-division into ego states is significant, and an equally tenable hypothesis might be that the states and boundaries of political entities have been imposed by men on each other because these represent an externalization of the internal divisions in their own selves. This hexagram's shadow side reveals circumstances preventing the union of entities or forces, more than those conditions promoting fruitful affiliation. Note that only the first and fifth lines of the figure depict a positive synthesis. The first one is minor, and in the case of line 5, union is attained only after much struggle. Line 2 reveals a clique or faction situation opposed to the general welfare. And lines 3 and 4 are images of recalcitrant forces unable to either join or attack the alliance. The sixth line depicts a partial union, probably the most common outcome in general experience, which the Confucian commentary nevertheless minimizes. Out of 6 lines, then, only 2 describe anything like complete fellowship. I have received this hexagram without changing lines when the context of the question revealed an incestuous clique-type situation, so not all fellowship or union of forces is necessarily an ideal configuration. We will now turn back to our primary hexagram and read our changing lines 1, 2, and 6. Which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here's some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Each line has its own general context. Changing line 1 has the general context. Inklings, just beginning to sense what could be involved or needed. Changing line 2, the heart's perception, the emotional center where you make and feel connections. And changing line 6, beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Our primary hexagram 28, critical mass, changing line 1, leg. The first line, magnetic, shows one placing mats of the white mao grass under things set on the ground. There will be no error. Blowfold, for mats, use white rushes, no error. White rushes are less common than ordinary ones and probably make more beautiful mats. The implication may be that if we decide to do things rather nicely, we might as well go a little further and do them as charmingly as possible. Confucian commentary, Confucius/leg. She feels the weakness of being in the lowest place and uses extraordinary care. Wilhelm/Baines. The yielding is underneath. Blowfold. The reference is derived from the position of this yielding line below so many firm ones. A further commentary explains that they symbolize treating things with gentleness. Ritzema/Karcher. Supple, located below, indeed. Clary 2. Flexibility in a low position. Wu, because the meek is in the low position. The master said, to place the things on the ground might be considered sufficient, but when one places mats of the white grass beneath them, what occasion for blame can there be? Such a course shows the height of carefulness. The white grass is a trivial thing, but through the use made of it, it may become important. One who goes forward using such careful art will not fall into any error. Leg. The first line is magnetic at the bottom of both the hexagram and the lower trigram of humility or flexibility. Therefore, she is distinguished by carefulness, as in the matter mentioned, and there is a good auspice. Notes and paraphrases, Sue. At the outset, the man displays considerable care in embarking upon an important enterprise. Wing. When embarking on an important endeavor, it is necessary to pay particular attention to details at the beginning. The times are indeed extraordinary, and you must be particularly careful to proceed in the right way. Being overcautious is not a mistake. Editor, the idea is to lay a careful foundation for any enterprise to prevent later instability. Make careful choices now to prevent evil consequences later on. A quote from Plato in the Republic. Don't you know that the beginning is the most important part of every work, and that this is especially so with anything young and tender? For at that stage it's most plastic. and each thing assimilates itself to the model whose stamp anyone wishes to give it. James Dekorne breaks changing line 1 down into 2 possible succinct definitions, A and B. A, begin carefully, and B, extreme caution is indicated. Changing line 2. Leg. The second line dynamic shows a decayed willow producing shoots, or an old husband in possession of his young wife. There will be advantage in every way. Lu, the withered poplar tree sprouts new shoots. The old man marries a young wife. Everything is favorable. Wu, a withered willow tree grows a young shoot. An old man takes a young wife. Everything is advantageous. Ancient society gave approval to this kind of matrimony for the desire of having children in the family. Willow trees like water and do well on the bank of marshes. It is not uncommon for a withered old tree to have new shoots. Confucian commentary. Confucius/Leg. Such association is extraordinary. Wilhelm/Baines. The extraordinary thing is their coming together. Blofeld. He weds her because they have been overmuch together. From his point of view, it is in any case a matter for satisfaction, so it is taken here to symbolize favorable circumstances. Some commentaries suggest another implication, namely that the old man is able to take on tasks normally difficult for the elderly. Ritzema/Karcher. Exceeding uses mutual associating indeed. Cleary 2. He has her for a companion in spite of being older. Wu. They will make a harmonious couple. Leg. Line 2 has no proper correlate above, hence he inclines to the magnetic first line below him. This suggests an old husband with a young wife who will yet have children. The action will turn out favorably. Notes and paraphrases. Su. An extraordinary reinvigoration occurs. During unusual occasions, it may be desirable to join the lowly in order to permit a new outlook and growth. Wing. Look to those who are modest in attitude or are beginners themselves to help you in your endeavors. This way you are in the company of persons who can understand and share the enthusiasm of your goals. Things will move smoothly and the situation will become revitalized. Editor. The trigram for wood beneath the trigram for a lake or marsh suggests the idea of a tree that grows near water, hence a willow tree. Whether dry, withered, decayed, or bitter, this old tree experiences an unexpected renewal of life. The elderly husband and young wife are a different metaphor for the same idea, and the symbolism can sometimes refer to a union of thought and feeling. Psychologically implicit is the idea of intellect as mentor and guide to emotional responses, an archetypal relationship. A quote from Jung in Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. In such dream wanderings, one frequently encounters an old man who is accompanied by a young girl, and examples of such couples are to be found in many mythic tales. James Dekorne breaks changing line 2 down into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A, a fruitful renewal. B, old ideas are reinvigorated by fresh insights. And C, a creative balance of knowledge and ability. In changing line 6, leg. The 6th line magnetic shows its subject with extraordinary boldness, wading through a stream till the water hides the crown of her head. There will be evil, but no ground for blame. Blofeld. While he was fording the river, the water rose above his head, misfortune, but he was not at fault. Slofnacy. Surpassing and fording causes the top of the head to vanish. Inauspicious, there is no trouble. Cleary 1. Excess reaching the peak of destruction is unfortunate. There is no blame on other people. At the end of excess of the great, being ignorant and acting arbitrarily, not knowing the medicinal or the the medicinal substances or the firing process, doing whatever comes to mind, going astray and not returning. The damage is worse than the higher one goes. Excess reaches the peak of destruction. One calls misfortune upon oneself. It is no fault of others. This is excess of the great in the sense of being weak and entertaining illusions. Clary 2. Going too far, passing away at the peak, there is misfortune, but no blame. Here are only the virtues of flexibility and uprightness, without the ability to solve difficulties. So misfortune cannot be avoided, but one is really not to blame. In Buddhist terms, this is when correct concentration has no insight, winding up as a fall at the peak. Wu. He is drowned while crossing the river. This is foreboding, but blameless. Confucian commentary. Confucius/Leg. Evil follows wading with extraordinary boldness through the stream, but the act affords no ground for blame. Wilhelm/Baines. One should not join blame to the misfortune of going through the water. Blowfold. This presages a misfortune for which we cannot possibly be blamed. Ritzema/Karcher. Not permitting fault indeed. Clary 2. The misfortune of going too far cannot be blamed. Wu. The ill fortune of getting drowned should not be a cause for blame. Leg. The sixth line pursues her daring course with an intent to rectify the extraordinary exigency of the time and benefit all under the sky. She is unequal to the task and sinks beneath it, but her motive justifies the judgment on her conduct. Notes and paraphrases. Sue. The man pursues his objectives for the public good, regardless of the consequences and danger. Misfortune results, but no blame is attached to his conduct because there are certain things more important than life itself. Wing. The goal is worth accomplishing, although the sacrifice to attain it may be confounding in its enormity. No blame is attached to such action, although you should realize the extraordinary reality of what is happening. Anthony. It is careless to wish to accomplish our task, no matter what happens. Plunging ahead on our own is always dangerous and willful. It is best to retain carefulness, allowing ourselves to be guided. Meanwhile, having followed our principles is without blame, even though the result may be dangerous. Editor. Like any line in the I Ching, this one is open to more than one interpretation. It can suggest suffering while undertaking a necessary but difficult task, or it can portray one ignorantly pushing the river in pursuit of goals one doesn't really understand. Legg's commentary about being unequal to the task is not explicit in the original line, i.e., failure is not necessarily a foregone conclusion. Life's lessons are often painful. That's just the way it is, and you are not to blame for it. Cleary's mention of medicinal substances refers to Taoist alchemical procedures. A quote from Luke 9:23-25. If anyone wants to be a follower of mine, let him renounce himself and take up his cross every day and follow me. For anyone who wants to save his life will lose it, but anyone who loses his life for my sake will save it. James Dekorne breaks changing line 6 down into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A. Plunge in and accept the consequences of your choices. Bite the bullet and do your duty. B. A painful lesson is in the school of hard knocks. And C. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. We'll now get a randomly card-drawn verse from the Tao Te Ching while I sum the reading up. Our primary hexagram, 28, Excess of the Great, shows a tent being held up by a ridgepole that is about to break. And the advice there is that it's good to move out of the way. Any direction furthers, or it's good to have a direction to go. Our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, is hexagram 13, sameness with people. This shows heaven, Kuan heaven, the trigram Kuan heaven above Li, fire and light. And just as the sun in the sky, or of heaven, is similar to a fire down on earth, this is like the sameness with people. And I think we'll turn to Hilary Barrett just briefly to take a look at what she says about that. 13. People create harmony with one another where they are of like mind and find common cause. They come out from the walls of their villages to forge alliances in the wild country. That is, they seek out common ground where they can meet, beyond the familiar boundaries that usually define the limits of people like us. This means radically expanding the whole idea of who we are. Such fellowship is usually created between people, but it can also take place within an individual, for instance, between inner selves or between apparently unrelated traditions and ways of knowing. There is harmony when these are brought together in inner conversation to create strong alliances. There is strength and energy in alliance. People in harmony can commit themselves further, take greater risks. They can cross the river and enter new territories. Once there is agreement, it's worthwhile to follow the vision tenaciously with the constancy of a noble one. Harmony between people will not come about by forcibly amalgamating the clans. To disarm their natural defensiveness, the noble one needs first to recognize and respect identities different from his own. Our changing lines that put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here's some places you may find yourself, and they take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 1 of our primary hexagram 28, excess of the great, shows somebody about to set something on the ground, and they decide that they're going to put down a mat of white grass beneath it, which is showing great care for the beginning of something. And even though that task be something that you might consider mundane, treating it with a certain level of care when starting out something is good to do and can set the theme for the entire process to follow. Changing line 2, let me see, changing line 2 had what was it? Oh, that's right. An old willow tree. Willow trees often grow in marshy areas, and it's not uncommon to see young shoots coming up from them, even though they're old. And the image is that of entertaining. The idea is an old man marrying a young woman, and the goal in ancient Chinese culture for something like that would be to have offspring, to have children. And this is auspicious, essentially, in this line. It shows that they will have children and it will be a good situation. Changing line 6, let me see here too. I want to look up in our I Ching, walking your path, creating your future. Willow trees have an irrepressible vitality. The old wood will open to the flow of new sap, and even the withered willow sprouts shoots. And in the same way, even older men can marry and have the chance of new descendants. The framework gains a new lease of life, and nothing fails to bear fruit. Even if it seemed exhausted, it can hold space for something new, young and fertile. And then changing line 6 shows somebody exceeding in wading the river, and their head goes underwater, and there's a pitfall but no mistake. And essentially, it shows somebody going after like a righteous cause, and due to the necessity of what they're doing, there's no fault placed on them, even though they essentially drown or have their head covered underwater. So all of those things together. There was one other thing I wanted to read in James Dekorne here, actually, that was really great. And was it in this top section? I think it's in our supporting hexagram, really, 13. Here we go. So the judgment for supporting hexagram 13. Connections are being made. If you are able to maintain your will, it is advisable to push for a synthesis. The superior man differentiates and prioritizes. He sorts and evaluates his options. The Chinese name of this hexagram includes the word Zhen, which is apparently a difficult concept since many philosophers have spent a good deal of energy in trying to define it. Zhen has been variously translated. This is a quote from Wing Sit Shan in a source book in Chinese philosophy. Zhen has been variously translated as benevolence, perfect virtue, goodness, human-heartedness, love, altruism, etc. None of these expresses all the meanings of the term. It means a particular virtue, benevolence, and also the general virtue, the basis of all goodness. Neo-Confucianists interpreted it as impartiality, the character of production and reproduction, consciousness, seeds that generate, the will to grow, one who forms one body with heaven and earth, or the character of love and the principle of mind. In modern times, it has even been equated with ether and electricity. Chu Hsi defines Zhen as the character of the mind, psyche, and the principle of love, union. Interpreted in this way, we are enabled to apprehend the essence of the word love, which is union, becoming one with its object. I've chosen the title of Union of Forces to emphasize intrapsychic dynamics, which are not immediately obvious in Wilhelm's title of Fellowship with Men. For example, in dealing with questions pertaining to the work, the concept of ego states or subpersonalities is often relevant to the symbolism of this hexagram. A quote from J.G. Watkins in The Therapeutic Self: "The human self has been described here as composed of different ego states separated by boundaries. It has been likened to the structure of political principalities. From clinical observation, we find that ego states can cooperate for mutual well-being, like allied nations against a common enemy. An ego state may become split, like East and West Germany, or fracture into many segments, like the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Ego states may become cognitively dissonant and hostile to each other, like Syria and Israel. In fact, the behavior of ego states within an individual is not unlike that between individuals and between those groups of individuals we call countries. Why should the behavior of human stuff not be substantially similar at all levels of its organizations? The evidence of self-division into ego states is significant, and an equally tenable hypothesis might be that the states and boundaries of political entities have been imposed by men on each other because these represent an externalization of the internal divisions in their own selves." with the excess of the great and the ridge pole sagging and almost breaking, it's interesting that we even got 2 auspicious lines out of that, since some translators almost advise rushing out of the situation in any direction whatsoever, like a hysterical flight from danger. Not all of them do, though. So there's almost like the sense that something that was once working is now collapsing around us, and it's time to move, essentially. And in that, moving on to the supporting hexagram of sameness with people, it shows that categorizing and distinguishing between groups of people is a way that you can assimilate to all of the groups and maybe have less division in the end, when you are able to see that not all groups are the same and everything. So to have things accord, it's necessary to first start with division and creating categories. And that idea of union, or the ether even, or love, being things that bring people together, including the idea of unifying ego states within somebody. So almost as if creating wider connections is important, and taking the time to differentiate different groups in order to make that be a successful outcome in a situation where the walls are crumbling down around us, so to speak. And whether or not that'll be successful is shown essentially in the changing lines. Changing line 1 was, again, placing a mat down for something mundane to sit on the ground upon. And that the care that we put towards a new beginning, maybe you want to call it that, even if it seems maybe overly careful, the start of something is the most important part of it and its foundation. So it's good to have care in how we start a new enterprise, or new relationships, or new developments, whatever that might mean. And then with an old man marrying a young girl, or the idea of the withering willow tree sprouting new shoots, shows that something that on the outside may not seem reasonable as far as union is concerned can have productive or benefit. So almost maybe like not overly focusing on differences, but more so on harmony and ways that productivity can happen through merging and union. And then even if we are to fail, there's not going to be any fault placed on us because of the exigency of the times, and that the course is righteous. In changing line 6, someone's wading out into a river and the water goes over their head, but they are not faulted. I'm trying to think of maybe even more succinct way to put this. So what was once working and is a structure or system that we could count on and put our trust in, and is just a given, like a fish in water, is something that is having to be really, really closely looked at and abandoned in favor of union and synthesis that goes beyond maybe even superficial divisions that all of us live in different countries, different races, different genders, different political parties or whatever, and yet we're all human, which is a class of entities. And the goal is to bring into union things even amongst their diversity, and not to get rid of diversity, but to honor it, and yet at the same time have there be fruitful outcome, as when an old man marries a young girl, and that care is necessary in transitioning from the collapse of one structure and support system into the building and foundation of something new. That the care we put into it will help raise up something that has care built into its very foundation and essence, and that even things that seemingly might be considered mundane, that could just sit on the ground, for instance, with changing line 1, setting the white grass down before placing the thing down on the ground in the very, very beginning is the foundation of the hexagram, helps the whole thing proceed as it should, and hopefully gets us to a place where we don't drown in trying to take on a righteous course, so to speak, but that there is fruitfulness to our ability to sense a deeper union that transcends all of the superficial boundaries, even of place and country, where we're coming from, different ideologies, belief systems. I suppose coming together against maybe a common enemy, that of complete human extinction. Now I feel like I'm rambling. You get the point, though, I think. Three verses we will read from the Tao Te Ching: 11, 10, and 2. My copy of the Tao Te Ching is by Jia Fu Fang and Jane English. Verse 11. "30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes which make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there." Carrying body and soul and embracing the one, can you avoid separation? Attending fully and becoming supple, can you be as a newborn babe? Washing and cleansing the primal vision, can you be without stain? Loving all men and ruling the country, can you be without cleverness? Opening and closing the gates of heaven, can you play the role of woman? Understanding and being open to all things, are you able to do nothing? Giving birth and nourishing, bearing yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit, leading yet not dominating. This is the primal virtue. And 2. Under heaven, all can see beauty as beauty only because there is ugliness. All can know good as good only because there is evil. Therefore, having and not having arise together. Difficult and easy complement each other. Long and short contrast each other. High and low rest upon each other. Voice and sound harmonize each other. Front and back follow one another. Therefore the sage goes about doing nothing, teaching no talking. The 10,000 things rise and fall without cease, creating yet not possessing, working yet not taking credit. Work is done, then forgotten. Therefore it lasts forever.